This tutorial is going to go through ways to customize your image if you want to be a little more creative with it and do something different in the background or on the images themselves. The first thing that I would think about is the background. So if you have an image like this where it feels like there's extra space that's missing, I would either add a couple more images or think about adding a texture picture in the background. So texture pictures definitely work well to fill the space. So I'm going to go to File and then Place Linked and find a texture picture, which basically is just an up-close image of some sort of surface. So you could take a picture of really anything up close. So let me see if I can find an image here. There we go. And I'm going to hit Place. And I'm going to make sure that my image is the right size so it will fill a specific area. This picture I downloaded from online. Make sure you obviously take yours yourself so it's not as blurry. But I made sure mine's in the background so you can see how it's starting to fill the space a little bit, make everything blend together. I'm going to hit Command T to make the size a little bit bigger still. And then I'm going to hit the check. So you can see that having a texture in the background definitely ties everything together. So if your image is kind of empty, there's a little bit of spaces, try adding a texture. Something else you can try to customize your images, make them a little different, stand out, is something like this where you have a drop shadow. So just this image has the drop shadow, so you can see a little bit of that value change behind the image. And that's helping it to really stand out and kind of jump forward. So to do that, what you'll do is double click on your picture layer, so not the mask, but the picture layer that's on the left. So I'm going to double click on that, and then I'm going to go down to drop shadow. Now make sure that you have this button checked, the preview button, so you can see it in real life, real time. So on the right here, you can see my drop shadow that's added. Just play around with some of the settings. So maybe it's too dark of a drop shadow, so I would definitely stay away from doing something like this. I would keep your opacity maybe around 30%, so you don't want it to be too dark, just something kind of subtle that blends in. And then think about the angle or the direction you want your drop shadow to go. Think about the distance, so if you want it kind of blurry or spread out further away from your picture, close to your picture, think about the distance that you want your drop shadow to be. So just play around with some of these different settings and then hit OK and move on to your next image if you're adding a drop shadow to that. Something else that tends to work well with adjusting your images, making them stand out, is adding a stroke around your individual photos. This one here has a stroke or an outline around the image. So what you're going to do to create that outline is double click on your picture layer and again go onto the left side where it says stroke and make sure you click on stroke as well. I would stay away from doing a really thick stroke, so I would try and do something kind of thin so it doesn't take up too much space within the image. So something thin like this. You could even take down the opacity so it doesn't stand out as much if you'd like. Something else to think about is varying the size of strokes. So maybe this picture in the front here where I have the drop shadow, I could add a thicker stroke to it so it stands out even more. And just kind of varying the size tends to work well. Something else you can do is make some of your images maybe black and white, some desaturated. So if your image is linked, so if you have that little paper clip, double click on it and adjust your image. However, if your image is not linked, like this one here, I'm going to go up to Image and then Adjustments, and then I'm going to go to Hue and Saturation. So this allows me to take down the saturation, make it maybe brighter, have a little bit of color, so maybe you want some that are in between. Can play around with how light the image is as well. So just kind of keep playing around with your images, try and make each one different and stand out. Something else you can think of is maybe using the tablet or maybe drawing on top of your picture, so using your paintbrush and drawing around the edges of your flower petals. Maybe you could use a paintbrush on a low opacity, making sure that you have a new layer, and painting over top of your image, so maybe making some have a little bit more color. So be creative again and just do something different that's going to stand out, but at the same time make sure everything's cohesive and fits together really well.